Thanks for being with us again. And how long have you been with Blizzard?
I've now been with Blizzard for over 5 years and working on World of Warcraft for all of that time.
Where did you come over from? What projects have you worked on before that?
I didn't work on any previous game projects. I was actually in a different industry altogether. The reason I came to Blizzard and was recruited is because I was a hardcore MMO player leading a guild in EverQuest.
So in the transition from not just coming into the gaming industry, but over the course of the 5 years you've been with Blizzard, seeing the entire genre you're so into change, what do you think is the most positive impact World of Warcraft has had on the MMO market?
I think MMO developers have now realized, hopefully thanks to World of Warcraft, that they need to focus more on making a fun game, first and foremost. I think they need to look into making a game that would be fun if only one person played it by themselves, locked away from the rest of humanity. When we first started developing World of Warcraft, a lot of the talk in the MMO community was revolving more around community management, forcing dependencies of players, that sort of thing. And I think really trying to force a social interaction that's not necessarily natural isn't the right focus. The right focus is create a really fun entertainment experience for people and create an atmosphere that encourages social interaction but doesn't force it.
So, and this is probably a tougher question, what do you think is the most negative impact WoW has had on the MMO market?
I think the most negative impact that WoW's probably had on the MMO market is it's slowed the development down of all the other games because they're all playing our game right now.
Do you think there's also a degree that people are less willing to get involved in making an MMO even though they can see the money, they're afraid to try to compete with World of Warcraft?
Well, I'm really excited for the people who are competing with World of Warcraft because I feel like they're all driving towards their own individual niche, more so than just trying to clone the game. And that really excites me because I'm an MMO player, so I'm going to play whatever comes out there and really check it out and be excited by what they're doing. So I want to see people try new things. In a lot of ways, even though WoW has intimidated a lot of MMO developers from creating new games, there's a lot of people who have stepped up to take the challenge, and I'm kind of excited as a player to see what they do.
Years ago, back when WoW was in a very similar state actually to where Wrath of the Lich King is today, our own Alan Roush interviewed you and talked about the goal of WoW, and one of the early things you mentioned was the game needs to be fun, and MMO needs to be fun, and it's good to be able to talk to you now and see how well that's reflected and how close you guys have held to that core value. Do you feel that, and especially after the Raids and Dungeons talk that we had yesterday where you explained that some of the stuff you guys are looking at when you're building the entire game is that you plan bigger than you can actually build, and then you change and you adapt as you go. Do you feel like that's implemented successfully, or do you feel like perhaps you've bitten off a bit more than you can chew by following that plan, by trying to make it very fun and approachable, by having more stuff that you can necessarily build? You have a lot of people who are encountering the end game and they just don't have enough to do, or they just don't want to do a type of game that's so different than the initial game. Is that a key problem? Is it a solvable problem?
Well, I think the core of the problem is making sure that not only do we have deep content, but we have content that stretches across the game into different areas of gameplay. So I think the players who are raiding right now are really enjoying the raid content that we do have. A lot of players have claimed that the Kael'thas encounter is one of our most or one of our best implemented encounters in the game. It goes through 5 different phases, and it feels really deep and meaningful to them. Contrary to that, we also need to be focusing on other parts of the game that aren't the raid game. So an example would be the new daily quests that we've introduced to the game. This has given the players who don't necessarily want to even group up or PvP something to do in their time that's more quest-driven, like the experience they had leveling up from 60 to 70. Then we also want to make improvements to the PvP game for the players who are never sort of going into that part of the game. So what we really need to focus on is the fact that we have so many different players doing so many different things, and making sure that there's fun things to do for all of those players. What's important in an example that you were leading to in the raid game is creating fun raid content. I don't know if our job is to necessarily make the top-rated arena teams suddenly think raiding is fun, so much as making sure that raiding is fun for the players who like raiding. Make sure PvP is fun for the players who like PvP, and make sure that the solo game is fun for the players who like just playing by themselves.
Looking at the Burning Crusade, what do you think worked best there? What do you think fell apart the worst there? And what's the most important lesson you took from the Burning Crusade, the first expansion to Blizzard's first MMO, both of which did, I think, better than anyone could have predicted, and you're sort of going into your next big effort, Wrath of the Lich King?
That's a really great question. It's something that we reflect upon so we can make Wrath of the Lich King even better. The things that I think worked out really well, the creation of the zones. I think we have some of the best zones, some of the most interesting quests in the game actually in Burning Crusade, and I think the leveling experience is extremely fun in Burning Crusade, so I was very happy with that. I was very happy with a lot of our 5-man instance design. I think that came off really well. And the sheer number of 5-person instances that we introduced to the game was something that I was very proud of. Players had, all but demanded that there be more 5-man content, and I feel like we really came home strong with Burning Crusade. And I also think that the heroic dungeons were one of Burning Crusade's greatest accomplishments, that we showed players not only that you care about these instances when leveling up, but if you wanted to go back and have a rewarding experience at max level, there was a reason to do that again. I also think our arena system was really cool. It was finally that PvP system that let the skilled players advance and show how great they were based on skill, not time investment. Now, some of the things that I think we could improve upon, specifically I think about some things in the raid game. I wasn't entirely happy with our attunement progression and how easy it was to segue into raids. That was probably the one area that I'd like to improve upon the most. Not only in Wrath of the Lich King, but I want to make changes to the game in Burning Crusade. I feel like these are mistakes that we can fix. So one thing that we've already done was remove the attunements from Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep the Eye. I think this was really a step in the right direction of going, okay, we're a little too hardcore. We need to back off a little bit and ease people in. Something that I've been talking over extensively with our encounter team is in the raid tuning itself. An example is the High King Mulgar encounter, one of the first encounters that players experience in Burning Crusade. I think it's an awesome encounter, but it's probably a little bit too complex for an entry-level raid. So we want to make sure that our entry-level raids not only are accessible to people by not being hidden behind strong or difficult attunements, but we want to make sure that the complexity of those raids is also easy to sort of wrap your head around and explain to a raid and get people there.
So moving on more precisely to Wrath, one of the goals we're looking at is having Arthas show up and be a bit more of an active NPC than Illidan was. Do you feel that's going to take away from the impact of him of finally dealing with the Lich King if he's showing up handing out quests?
No, I actually think it'll reinforce the final moment when you really get to engage him. If anything, with a character, we learned this with Illidan. I felt like we ultimately made a mistake with Illidan. He's such a great character, and you got to interact with him so much in the Warcraft 3 games, and then in our game he got pocketed away to the very end of the game, and you didn't really get to see him at all. With Arthas, I feel like we finally have the chance to correct that. He's such a great, strong character. Not only did players interact with him in Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne, I mean, they actually played as him in those games. So Arthas isn't like the evil guy behind the screen that nobody's seen before. They know his face. It's been on boxes of our games. So it's not a surprise who he is. So I feel like the more that they can interact with him and be a part of the story, the more rich the entire experience will be.
We have time for one, maybe two more questions. So, and if you can answer this, is the goal to roll out one hero class per expansion, or is that going to be ramped up ideally?
I think we want to see how the Death Knight plays out and then decide if it's one per expansion or more than that. Really, we want to be careful with how many classes we introduce to the game at any time. Unlike races, where we feel like we can add races at a relatively good pace without affecting the game balance too much, classes run the risk of watering down the roles of other classes. And one of the strong points of World of Warcraft is that we've had such unique class design in all of our classes. So we want to make sure that we're not just rolling them out at a clip that's so fast that we water down the existing classes.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being with us, and we're looking forward to seeing Wrath of the Lich King when it comes out.